Men of Reddit, what is the most hurtful thing a girl has ever said to you? Story 1. You're like perfect boyfriend material. I just wish you were better looking. Word for word, after talking to her for a couple of weeks. The only thing I can say to that is, all she did was prove that she is not girlfriend material. Why, that sounds so corny. Story 2. I'm not a good looking man, so imagine my surprise when a beautiful girl approaches me in a crowded bar. This has never happened before. She beckoned me close and said, "Hey, do you mind if I kiss you?" It's a dare. Then looked over at her table of friends in the distance who were in absolute hysterics. Sure, I mumbled. Not out of nerves for once, but out of sadness. After I realized that I was just the butt of another joke, I didn't want to kiss her at all. But I'm socially awkward at the best of times, and saying no would have prolonged the situation even longer. No, I didn't enjoy it. As her lips met mine, I could feel tears welling up in my eyes. Her friends were cheering across the crowded bar, and my own mates were starting to crack up. I wanted to disappear. Other people say much nastier things to me in public all the time, but this was the most hurtful. It was something about how quickly her words lifted me to cloud 9 and then dropped me back to reality. This incident happened about 5 years ago when I was in my mid to late 20s, at a time when I was putting myself out there for the first time since high school. So yeah, it was a setback at the time to realize that some people still act like that. But while unpleasant, it certainly wasn't a life-defining moment, and I kept putting myself out there. I'm still socially awkward at times, and I'm still not an attractive man, but I regularly challenge myself in different facets of my life, and lots of fantastic opportunities have come out of it. My confidence grows every year, and maybe one day that will translate into a romantic relationship. And if it doesn't, then that's not the end of the world. Yeah, stuff like that hurts, you know? It's like, it's one thing if someone just straight up just calls you ugly. It's like, it's not really that big of a deal. But in situations where your hopes do get raised and you think they're like, you feel happy, and then just to get crushed, those are probably the worst things you can really do when it comes to hurting someone's feelings, you know? Story 3. I was 14, on board of a ro-ro ship in the middle of the Adriatic. On our way to Greece, yes, the exact same ship that caught on fire last week. It was really freaking hot, so I decided against sleeping in our cabin. I took my sleeping bag topside and installed myself. Half an hour later, a couple of French girls show up. I was almost asleep, but heard one of them say, "Hey, there's someone sleeping there," to which another girl replied, "Putir illa surely." That's my best attempt at French. Maybe he's pretty. Immediately after those words, the whole world erupts into a blinding white light. The girl had taken a flashlight and shown it directly into my face, and then she spoke that single terrible word, none. Listen, you're fine, you know, if an adult calls you ugly, you know, it could be a million things, but I'm gonna make this very clear. If a kid ever calls you ugly, you have a big red flag. You have a big danger zone happening right now. If a kid calls you ugly, there is no biases or hidden agendas. Story 4. I once had a girl I was interested and openly flirting with tell me, "Too bad you aren't as good looking as your brothers." I have self-confidence issues, but being told I was the ugly brother was absolutely brutal to hear. For the record, I have 4 brothers. Story 5. I feel your pain. I have one sister. She could have been a model. She is gorgeous, perfect features. And me, well, let's just say that I am certain God has a sense of humor, and that dude was laughing his butt off when he made me. I always kind of knew that, but it wasn't until college that someone blatantly pointed it out. This guy, who I was not dating or trying to date, just a study partner, recognizes my sister from a pic on my phone. He said, "Oh hey, you're so-and-so sister." Yeah, too bad you don't have her looks, because I would have effed you already. Then I proceeded to respond with, "Why don't you F yourself?" I quit studying with him. He failed English, and if you read this, I'm not so sorry, Chad. Alright, real talk, where do these guys come from? I've never met a guy who's just such a caveman. Story 6. Not me, but a girl I know read a text she sent to her ex-boyfriend. "You're the most pathetic person I've ever met. It's no wonder your parents don't want to have a relationship with you. You work out at the gym so people will like you and not talk behind your back, but in reality, everyone says how much of a loser you are. You're a balding 30-year-old with a physique that no one could be attracted to and never will. You're hung like a baby, and most of my friends think you're actually gay." A part of me died after reading that. Women know how to uncover a man's deepest insecurities and absolutely just shatter their self-esteem. Honestly, I'm not sure if I'd recover from something like that. God be with you, man. Story 7. I dated a girl around a year and had just brought her home to meet my family during winter break. Since my family lives in Hawaii, I stayed behind an extra 2 weeks to spend time at home before the next semester started. 3 days after she got back from her visit, she decided to break up with me over Facebook. Really took me by surprise. This was the first relationship I had ever had, and the first girl I ever quote-unquote loved. I took it pretty hard, I'm not gonna lie. After a pretty rough on me 2 weeks being confused, I finally decided to give her a call to set up a time I could pick up a few personal belongings I had left in her apartment. For safety reasons, she had a lock on her door. She told me the last time we spoke in person, "I don't know why you're taking this so hard. You shouldn't let someone mean this much to you in your life. Just move on, it's no big deal. You will be fine." Might not seem that bad to some, but that crap will stick with me forever. At the time, I felt like I would never get better. I have to say though, it's probably the nicest thing she ever did for me. Got my crap together and worked on myself. Honestly, I can't be happier than I am right now. Sometimes things do happen for a reason. Story 8. I love you, said as I dropped her off at her crappy apartment. Allegedly, I could never come in when her roommates were home since they were hostile and very embarrassing people. So it went for months. Later it would turn out it was because she didn't live there. Her boyfriend lived there. Her apartment was a short walk around the corner from there. Apparently it was too long of a walk, so she would simply have me deliver her to her other man. She would kiss me goodbye, say she loved me, and less than a minute later be wrapped around another guy. Story 9. I had a girlfriend that I lived with for a year before I moved off to college, but we stayed together. We got into a big fight really quickly after that, and she was legitimately trying to make me break up with her. She said every mean thing that she could think of, short of one untouchable subject, to get me to say I was done. When we were together, she had been pregnant but had a miscarriage. During our fight, she said, "I'm glad I had that miscarriage. You would have been a terrible father." As someone who had lost a parent at a young age, I have always known that I would do my best to give my kids the world when that time does come. And I was not against the idea of us having kids together. I loved her. When she said that, it got deep. Story 10. It doesn't matter how blonde or athletic you are, you would still have been killed by Hitler. I have cerebral palsy. Well, it was a bit over a year ago now, so I can't remember all the details. When we were hanging out at my place and talked about stuff, she then started laughing and said that she thought about something awful. Or could have said that she thought of an awful joke. Can't remember. I asked her what it was and then she said it. So in a way, it was kind of my fault for her saying so, since I asked. But it's still a crappy thing to say or even think about. Alright, I have a very controversial opinion, okay? I really don't think it was that deep. I think it was more just kind of like an edgy style joke. In a way, if you think about it, she is still complimenting this person. She's like, "Oh, it doesn't matter how athletic you are." It just seems like a joke you would make if you're like, if you had that kind of friendship with someone. But I could see how this would seem wrong if they didn't really have that kind of relationship. But yeah, I'm gonna stand my foot on this. I really don't think that was the worst thing that could have happened. I could see why it could be perceived as crappy, and I could see it being weird if it's coming from someone that you really didn't know. Story 11. After proposing to her, getting engaged, spending wonderful months with her, I had to go abroad for 6 months for work. About 3 months in, she said, "I feel like I made a mistake. I don't feel like that I'm close to you or I love you anymore." By text. The way I felt at the moment was indescribable. A few months later, she came back to me to tell me that she actually loves me and wants me as a friend. Hurts terribly when you're still emotionally recovering. A month later, she got engaged to another guy who was already the source of arguments when I was still with her. My entire life felt like a lie at that point. I felt like the 3 years I spent with her were just a big lie, and this guy had probably already been around for a long time. To save me from depression, I decided that I wouldn't continue asking me questions about was it actual love or was she with him, lying the whole time, and chose to trust her. Still terrible though. Story 12. A bit of a backstory, but the case has a bit of poetic justice as well. This was in college, and because I tend to have a large vocabulary, the girl that ended up becoming my fiance thought I was from some rich family out in suburbia, as opposed to a scholarship student. Anyways, long story short, she begins to prepare moving into my rent-controlled apartment, and disillusionment begins setting in immediately. She sees quickly she's not going to be getting her white picket fence fantasy right off the bat, and all effort to the relationship plummets. I come home from work one day to find she has been playing the town bike in our bed. I tell the dude to get out of my place before I decide to blow his head off and tell the cops he was arguing my fiance, and begin having it out verbally with a soon-to-be ex, and that's when she dropped the bomb. "Well, if you were a real man, you'd be much taller, effing schoolboy." Now, I do want to say this, my height has never been a sensitive topic to me. I've always found ways to make it work to my advantage, but hearing that come from a woman who had basically been a leech on my resources and time so she could have fun riding a chicken carousel on my dime was infuriating. But I managed to keep myself under control. I ended up telling her, well, to be honest, I'm not a fan of women who slut it up all over town, but at least a slut has control over who she bangs. The good thing about sluts, though, you don't ever marry one. She teared up, called me an a-hole, and said I had only myself to blame. I shook my head and went, true, I am an a-hole. But all of this today, that's on you. And this a-hole is through with your lying twat. Get your crap and get out. Bonus round. She showed up on my doorstep 6 months later with a baby in tow trying to get a place to stay. She got kicked out of her place she had been staying at because she got caught cheating. Again! When I told her a GTFO, she looked down at the baby and tried to convince me it could be mine. My response, woman, do you expect me to believe a white woman and an Irish man would make a mulatto baby? Get off my doorstep before I call the cops. Haven't heard from her since. Alright, how is she gonna tear up and all that when she's literally cheating on him in his own house? How does that make any sense? Story 13. It doesn't count as sex, as you didn't, unload. It was my first experience and I felt like a champ the next day until she told me that. And it wasn't even my fault. She finished a few seconds in and tossed me a towel afterwards and said to finish myself. I don't know why it crushed my little heart back then. She was my crush since I was 12 though. We still messed around afterwards years later if neither of us had a relationship and needed to blow off steam. But her callous way, she said, it made me glad we never dated. She would have probably reduced my manhood to sad man being dragged behind his woman with a defeated face. Story 14. When I was a sophomore in college, I had a FWB that started freshman year. We hadn't hung out in a while and she kept texting saying we needed to get together. So we ended up planning a study date on a Tuesday or some crap. She comes to my place and we legit study for a bit, then things take a fun turn. We just make out because she didn't want to jump in where we had left off months before. Anyway, I'm messing with her phone when she receives a text that says, how was the pity date? And I see her previous text calling it just a pity date. I pretend like I didn't see it and she leaves 30 minutes later. When walking her to her car, she leans in for a kiss and I turn away saying, I think that may be one too many for a pity date. Her face goes to horror and she's speechless. I walk away and she calls out my name like in a crappy movie. Never spoke to her again. And now she's fat. Okay, why did this guy need to include that in the story? Like literally just at the end. And now she's fat. Why was that, necessary? It just caught me so off guard. What relevancy did that have? Story 15. On a night out with some friends about 7 years ago, we were outside in the beer garden as it was a very nice day and 2 of my friends were smokers at the time. Anyway, we were outside drinking and having a good time. And when my friends excused themselves to get more drinks, I overheard a couple of girls chatting at the table next to me. Basically, one of the girls was complaining how she had been single for a while now and jokingly said that she was desperate. Her friend says to her again in a joking way something along the lines of, you just need to pick one guy here and kiss him. She said, go on then, who would you choose? Her friend points at me and says, what about the guy over there with the long hair? And she goes, oh, good God, I'm not that desperate. Okay, it wasn't directly said to me, but I still hurt. The tone in her voice wasn't jokey at all. It was serious. Story 16. Number 1, I had a blind date for coffee. I was driving through traffic and realized I was going to be 10 to 15 minutes late. So, about 50 minutes before the scheduled time, I sent a text apologizing and saying I was going to be 10 to 50 minutes late. She texted me back saying that our mutual friend, the one who was setting us up, finally sent her a picture of me and that I didn't need to bother coming. I asked why, as I had already driven the majority of the way. Her response, you're not good looking enough to wait for. The call ended there, and then I got coffee anyway and a hot dog. It was a really good hot dog, and I regret nothing of that day. Number 2, in high school, I had a huge crush on a classmate of mine. I spent hours making some crafted animals for her. She wanted to be a vet as a Valentine's Day gift. On the day, I gave her the animals and some chocolates and asked her if she would be my Valentine. She looked me straight in the eyes with nothing but utter terror. She left the gifts on the ground, stood, backed up a few feet, then walked away without saying a single word to me. We had many classes together for the next year and a half of school. Fast forward 10 years later, I'm going through my old yearbook. In it, I found out that when some friends were signing my yearbook that she slipped a letter inside. The letter was simple and short, saying she apologized for her behavior and that I was a really nice guy. She explained that I scared her, and she didn't know how to react back then. Turns out, she had a friend pick up the gifts without my noticing, and she really liked them. I let her know I got the letter, tried to acknowledge the situation as it was, and went out and got some coffee and a hot dog. It was a very good hot dog, and I regret nothing. Number 3, at a bar, I started chatting with a woman next to me. I asked her if I could buy her a drink. She said that there was no way she would ever be interested in me, so I would just be wasting her time. I felt like she was evaluating my entire worth as a human and judging it to be utterly beneath any possible redemption because of a 3-minute conversation with me. Somehow, I was so worthless, she could sense it near immediately. I got a bar hot dog this time and beer. I regret nothing. Number 4, I had a girlfriend for almost 3 years, and we were discussing if we each wanted to have kids or not. She knew she wanted kids, as she had wanted them ever since she could remember. I told her that I didn't feel that way, and at best, I would stay and raise a kid. However, I had to be honest and state that I didn't think having kids was something I really wanted. She paused a bit, looked at me and said, "But you'd be such a good provider." I know it isn't a mean thing to say, but I was expressing what I wanted, and she turned it into something that she wanted. She wanted a provider for her kids and some guy who could fit that bill for her. So we broke up after that, and she took all my Dungeons and Dragons stuff when I was away at work and moved 7 states away. No hot dogs were had. She took those too. So many regrets. Number 5, the middle school dance. I asked the prettiest girl I have ever known till then if she would go to the dance with me. She said no. That's fine. It was worth the risk, and I was feeling like $1,000,000 for even getting the courage to ask her. A day later, she comes up to me and says that she would like to go to the dance with me. Fast forward to the dance, and she kind of ignores me the whole time to talk to another classmate of mine. Finally, the last slow dance of the evening, and she approaches me. We danced, and it was amazing. I'm not a super emotional guy, but it was time slowing, adrenaline pumping, face flushing, time traveling, amazing. At the end, she kisses my cheek and walks right over to the same classmate. I hear her say to him, "There, I did it. Can I have my stuff back now?" The same classmate repeatedly pantsed me throughout the entire year of gym class, before and after the dance. Never understood what his deal was. He's a banker now. No hot dogs. Alright, why is this man so obsessed with hot dogs? Holy crap. Either some reason, every time this guy gets his heart broken, he just gets a hot dog, or this guy just be eating hot dogs every single day. And I'm not sure which one to guess. Story 17. Now that I'm earning more than you, I don't think I need you anymore. 8 years of supporting her, from corner shop job to deputy head teacher, working my balls off to get our first flat and then house, selling my business to have a better life together, and then taking a pay cut in another job so I would be less stressed about work for her. What she actually meant was I'm effing the trainee teacher at work and I'm trying to think of every excuse possible to justify my behavior. Well, we're divorced now, and I've tripled my salary since she left. I like waving to her for my merc. Alright, that's some Sigma energy right there. See? That's some good energy. Yeah, I hate to say it, but like you really have to focus on yourself as an independent person, even in a relationship. Like you shouldn't be selling a business for a relationship. I understand every context is different. Don't take my advice with a grain of salt. Don't even take it with any salt. But I feel like people get too lost and they try to provide more for the relationship than they are for them,